Moving on from emotional cheating. 32F, 33M. My boyfriend, 33M, and I, 32F, have been in a relationship for slightly over 2 years, living together for just more than 1 year. If I concentrate solely on the positive aspects of our relationship, which is about 70% of the time, I would say it embodies everything I have ever desired. I believe he feels the same way as well. Despite our differing tastes and hobbies, we manage to appreciate our time together. Now, for the remaining 30%, we have encountered some significant challenges along the way. Firstly, while he did not appear to have any issues with commitment, he did seem to struggle with finalizing things with women he was previously involved with in his home country. Upon discovering the first girl, without snooping, but through her interaction with him on a specific Facebook post that aroused my suspicions, I confronted him right away. He claimed she was an old friend who had become a friends with benefits situation. After reviewing their past social media interactions, it was evident that my boyfriend had been quite flirty with her on social media, which was not his behavior with me. He insisted he had changed since then. When I inquired about the nature of their relationship at that time, he stated they merely chatted and were not flirty. However, she was unaware of my existence. I felt uncomfortable with his explanation and told him that he needed to inform her about me, and I would feel much better if he could temporarily stop engaging with her. Given my history with infidelity and the fact that we were about to move in together, the lease had already been signed. This revelation deeply unsettled me because I believed we were serious and had discussed exclusivity months earlier. He complied, and I refrained from checking any of his interactions during this period. A few months later, her Instagram account appeared in my suggestions, and out of curiosity, I clicked on it. To my dismay, I found it was public, and I noticed he had liked every one of her selfies and more. I'm not proud of my actions, but this struck a nerve. I regretted checking her Instagram. I understand that individuals can remain friends, but I felt uneasy and asked him to possibly reduce his attention towards her. I explained, initially politely but later less so, that this behavior made me feel insecure. We had also just moved in together, and he mentioned that he had stopped chatting with her, although I remained unconvinced. After moving in, he seemed somewhat distant towards me for a while, which I interpreted as his need for space. Yet, there were times I felt incredibly lonely and acted out. I acknowledge my behavior was inappropriate, but it felt as if we were living as strangers. At that point, he had not explicitly declared his love for me while I had. I know many of you will argue that we rushed into living together, and honestly, we did. However, circumstances led to it. Furthermore, when I was searching for apartments, we were both genuinely excited about starting this new chapter together. The initial few months involved adjustment and resulted in arguments. I tend to be direct and confrontational, while he is quite the opposite. He prefers peace. I couldn't provide that for him due to the inconsistency and insecurities I had not anticipated. Fast forward a few months, he visited his home country and we were apart for 10 days. When he returned, it felt wonderful. We had missed one another and were delighted to be reunited in our home. My birthday was approaching as well. Unfortunately, my birthday became one of the saddest days I had ever experienced, as I grew up in a household where my parents fought on my special day. His work was physically exhausting, and I was working from home that day. I prepared snacks to share for his arrival, but he came home empty-handed. His aunt had baked a cake the previous weekend and celebrated with me, but that was the extent of it. I had also cooked on that occasion. He mentioned he was tired and would get me something by the weekend. I didn't want to let this ruin my day further, but that was the situation. For context, during his birthday months before, I had purchased a cake with the last $20 I had and wrote him a card. At that time, I was financially stretched due to moving expenses. The following day, after work, he went out with friends to a bar, and I felt angry. I got drunk alone at home and initiated an argument, expressing that he could have taken me out if he could stay out late with his friends. The argument resulted in everything coming to the surface, including the situation with his friends with benefits. Notably, his birthday present to me was that he unfollowed her on social media. He brought me flowers the next day, but I feigned happiness to avoid further deteriorating the mood. My birthday felt like an afterthought, and I had never felt so alone. Although that situation resolved, Feelings of fear, doubt, and resentment gradually built up, leading me to commit the worst wrongdoing imaginable, invading his privacy. I know I made a significant mistake. One night, overwhelmed by my emotions, I snooped. I discovered that there were no existing conversations with the friends with benefits, likely due to the unfollowing on social media. I'm unsure if those messages were deleted or just absent. However, I found his photo gallery filled with sexual images and videos from women who had sent them to him prior to our relationship, including the friends with benefits. I assumed people deleted such content out of respect for the sender, or at the very least before moving in together. Among these pictures were several of an older woman with whom he had a secret Facebook chat. The chat was love-themed, employing the fire emoji as the default icon, and included self-deleting messages. Though no messages were viewable, it was evidenced by a Facebook chat dated about a month prior. Therefore, I presumed that was the last time they communicated secretly. He had erased messages from the non-secret chat, but some from a month after we had moved in persisted after my previous conversation with him about the friends with benefits, where I expressed how painful it was that his energy was directed towards other women while he returned home exhausted. The messages conveyed him comforting her through some issues she appeared to be facing. My heart shattered. In a moment of impulse, I blocked her from his Facebook account. I am unaware of why I took that action, and I view it as my worst moment of 2024. I eventually confessed to him what I did. He acknowledged that it was unfortunate I snooped, but clarified that this woman was merely a Facebook friend who had sent him sexually explicit messages. They had never met in person. He would respond to her with emojis days later, but interactions ceased because he took longer to reply. Her Facebook page contained many problematic images. She was significantly older, about 20 years, wearing various wigs, and he had liked all of them. This overwhelmed me, and I basically broke down. He assured me he would never choose her over me, but he had engaged with her while with me, which was enough for me to feel hurt. I suspect my boyfriend believes I am naive. I also began to compare myself to her, feeling unattractive and inadequate. Our sexual life had dwindled to once a month, even though I was always open to intimacy. He assured me she was aware of my existence and had even remarked on how fortunate I was. I conveyed to him that I considered this emotional infidelity. He did not grasp the concept, asserting that since we began our relationship, he had not been with anyone else, and I believe him. Nevertheless, it took weeks for him to comprehend the notion of micro-cheating. I sought counseling because I was spiraling into paranoia. He was supportive to an extent. He ceased those behaviors and became more attentive. However, this entire situation was troubling because even as he showed more affection, I had not fully healed. I repeatedly brought up my feelings, especially when drinking. I started a higher-paying job that required me to travel for work, and although the distance allowed me to focus on a completely new country, I struggled to sleep. The unresolved feelings continued to haunt me. Upon returning home, he transformed into the boyfriend I had always desired: attentive, loving, and caring. He gifted me numerous items for Christmas and paid close attention to my needs. Our sexual life improved as well. However, this issue always lingered in my mind. Every day, I felt unattractive. I grew to despise my appearance, leading me to neglect my grooming habits. I refrained from applying makeup because it required confronting my own reflection, which I had begun to loathe. Counseling significantly benefited me, and I felt much better, but before Christmas, during a light-hearted conversation, he commented that I was one of the hottest he had been with. I inquired about who he considered hotter, and I was upset when he was unable to articulate any names. This hurt deeply, and took another 2 months of therapy to process, yet I still perceived myself as unattractive and even contemplated plastic surgery. I just wanted to be with someone who loved me sufficiently that I wouldn't feel like a second choice. I'm aware that the situation outlined above reflects numerous red flags on both our parts. While I mentioned that 70% of our relationship is great and we have made progress in addressing these issues, they still occasionally haunt me, and I find myself bringing them up, which taints our good days. He nearly ended our relationship, stating that he is happy with me but feels I do not provide him with the one thing he desires: peace. What can I do to move on and cultivate a healthy relationship with him? To summarize, my boyfriend emotionally cheated and didn't understand the implications. I am seeking assistance to move forward and establish a positive relationship with him.